Hi, this is DeeBee Daws, and I'm living welderly with positivity by aging with purpose and changing by design. In James chapter 5, verse 9, we read, "Do not grumble against one another, brethren, lest you be condemned." Choosing not to be a complainer involves cultivating a mindset of positivity and resilience. It starts with awareness of one's thoughts and words, consciously steering away from negativity and complaints. Instead of focusing on problems, a non-complainer seeks solutions and opportunities for growth. They practice gratitude, appreciating the blessings and positives in their life, rather than fixating on what's lacking. Not being a complainer also involves empathizing with others, understanding that everyone faces challenges, and choosing to uplift rather than criticize. They communicate directly and constructively when issues arise, fostering understanding and collaboration. By maintaining a proactive and solution-oriented approach, non-complainers contribute to a more positive and supportive environment. They lead by example, inspiring others to adopt a similar mindset of optimism and constructive engagement with their daily interactions. I have a story here to tell you. Maybe it's a nursery story. There was once a man who was poor and lazy, and he had a wife who was even worse. Her name was Jenny. Jenny was so lazy that it was an effort for her to lift one foot after the other. And in addition to her laziness, she was an everlasting complainer. Oh, she used to grunt in the morning. I wish I didn't have to get up. And oh, she used to groan at night. I wish we didn't have to take off our shoes to go to bed. One day, when they were both out in the forest, and Jenny said, "I don't see why we're not rich. I don't see why the king should live at his ease while we have to grub for everything we get. I just hate work." Of course, the trouble, both with Jenny and her husband, was not that they worked, but that they didn't work. It was because they didn't that they had so much time to think about it. "Drat it all," Jenny went on, whining. "Adam and Eve are to blame for all our misfortunes. If they hadn't disobeyed God's commandment and eaten that apple, we'd all be living in the Garden of Eden to this day. It's all their fault that we have to toil and hurry and scurry." "Yes," the man agreed, "it is, especially Eve's. Of course, Adam was to blame too, for he should have controlled his wife better. But Eve was the more to blame. If I had been Adam, I shouldn't have allowed her to touch the apple in the first place." Now it happened that the king, who was out hunting that day, overheard this conversation. "Ha," he thought to himself, "I've a great mind to teach these two people a lesson." He pushed aside the bushes that had hidden him from them, and he said, "Good day to you both. And I have just heard your complaints, and I too think it very hard that you should be poor while others are rich. I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll take you both home with me to the castle and maintain you in ease and luxury, provided you obey me in just one thing." Jenny and her husband agreed to this eagerly, and just as they were, the king took them home with him to the castle. He lodged them in a room with golden furniture. He gave them fine clothes to wear, and for food he had them serve the choicest delicacies in the world. As they sat eating their first royal meal, he came into them carrying in his hands a covered dish of silver. He put the dish down in the center of the table. "Now, my friends," he said, "I promise to maintain you in this ease and luxury, provided you obeyed me in one thing. You see this silver dish? I forbid you ever to lift the cover. If you disobey me, that moment I shall take from you your fine clothes and send you back to your poverty and misery." With that, the king left them, and they stuffed themselves to their heart's content with the delicate foods set before them. They were so busy eating and drinking and admiring themselves in their fine clothes that for the first day they didn't give the covered dish a thought. The second day, the wife noticed it and said, "That's the thing we're not to touch." "Well, for my part, I don't want to touch it. I don't want to do anything but eat and sleep and try on my pretty new clothes." By the third day, they had eaten so much and so steadily that they were no longer hungry, and when they lay down on the big soft bed, they no longer fell instantly asleep. "Dear me," Jenny began whining. "I don't know what's the matter with this food. It doesn't taste as good as it used to. Maybe the cook has grown careless. I think we ought to complain to the king. I'm beginning to feel very uncomfortable, and I haven't any appetite at all. I wonder what's in that covered dish. Perhaps it's something to eat, something perfectly delicious. I've half a mind to lift the cover and see." "Now, just you leave that silver dish alone," the man growled. He too had been eating too much and was feeling peevish. "Don't you remember what the king said?" "Pooh," cried Jenny. "What do I care what the king said? I think he was just poking fun at us, telling us we mustn't lift the cover of that silver dish. After all, a dish is a dish, and it's no crime to lift a cover, even if it is made of silver." With that, Jenny jumped up, and before her husband could stop her, she lifted the forbidden cover. Instantly, a little white mouse hopped out of the silver dish and scurried away. "Oh!" Jenny screamed, dropping the cover with a great clatter. The king, who was in an adjoining chamber, heard the noise and came in. "So," he said, "you have done the one thing that I told you not to do. You haven't been here 3 days, and although you've had everything that heart could wish for, yet you couldn't obey me in this one little matter." "Your Majesty," the man said, "it was my wife who did it, not I." "No matter," the king said. "You too are to blame. If you had restrained her, it wouldn't have happened." Then he called his servants and had them strip off the fine clothes and dress the couple again in their old rags. "Now," he said, as he drove them from the castle gates, "never again blame Adam and Eve for the misfortunes which you bring upon yourselves." Stopping the cycle of complaining about the same old problems involves a shift in mindset and proactive steps to address underlying issues. Here's some strategies to help you break the habit. Start by practicing gratitude, by focusing on what you're grateful for each day. Try to understand why you tend to complain about certain issues, then take action. Instead of dwelling on complaints, take concrete steps to address the underlying problems. Reframe how you think and talk about challenges. Instead of viewing them as insurmountable problems, see them as opportunities for growth or learning. It's important to express frustration, but realize that excessive venting can reinforce negative patterns. Set boundaries on how much time you spend discussing problems without seeking solutions. Focus on solutions rather than dwelling on complaints. Stay present and mindful of your thoughts and emotions. When you fall into a cycle of complaining, redirect your focus. Talk to a trusted friend, family member, or therapist about your challenges. Find constructive ways to address issues. Surround yourself with positive influences and avoid environments where complaining is prevalent. Choose to spend time with people who uplift and inspire you. Use past experiences of overcoming challenges as motivation. Reflect on how you've grown from past difficulties and apply those lessons to current situations. I have a great true story to share with you today. I watched a video recently about a man named Johnny Barnes in Hamilton, Bermuda. At the time the video was made, Johnny Barnes was 92 years old. He stood on the edge of a roundabout and waved at people as they drove past. He'd been there since before 4 a.m. and would be there until 10 a.m. He wasn't asking for money or begging for food. He wasn't protesting, complaining, picketing, or loitering. He was there to make people happy. He wore a straw hat and had a salty beard. His eyes were bright, his teeth were white, and his skin was leathery and dark. The years had bent his back and slowed his step, but the years had not siphoned his joy. He waved with both hands extended in front of him. His wrists turned from side to side as if he were adjusting the volume on a soundboard. He pulled back his right hand to retrieve a kiss, and he blew it in the direction of a taxi driver or commuter. "I love you," he shouted. "I'll love you forever. Hello there, darling. I love you." And they loved him. Bermudans called him Mr. Happy Man. They routed their morning commute to see him. If Johnny was not standing in his spot, people called the radio station to check on him. If he happened to miss acknowledging some commuters, they often circled the roundabout until he waved at them. One morning, a cranky woman determined not to make eye contact with him. She wanted to wallow in her bad mood, but she ended up looking his way. When he smiled, she smiled. Another sour attitude bit the dust. Johnny's philosophy was simple. We human beings got to learn how to love one another. One of the greatest joys that can come to an individual is when you're doing something and helping others. Johnny was born on June 23, 1923. His parents came to Bermuda from St. Kitts, a West Indian island. He was an electrician and worked in the Bermuda railroads. In 1948, the railways closed and Johnny became a bus driver. At 60 years old, on his way to work one day, he stopped at Crow Lane Circle and decided to wave at commuters and smile. He got an indescribable amount of joy from that activity and decided to quit his job so he could spread love to others for the rest of his life. One day, when Johnny took a sick day, the people of Bermuda were shaken and then wondered what they would do when Johnny Barnes was no more. The people of Bermuda created a charity called the Spirit of Bermuda Trust. People donated enough money to commission internationally famous sculptor Desmond Fontaine, based in Bermuda, to create a 6.5-foot bronze statue of Johnny. On July 9, 2016, Johnny passed away at the age of 93. His last wish, he said, "May my absence from the bench at the roundabout and my statue, the Spirit of Bermuda, remind you to share love and kindness with each other." After Johnny's death, the Royal Gazette spoke with Kenneth Manders, president of the Bermuda Conference of the Seventh-day Adventists, and Johnny's pastor for 13 years at the Hamilton Seventh-day Adventist Church. He said, "Brother Johnny Barnes represents what has become known as the Spirit of Bermuda." Mr. Manders said, "His life, his love, his legacy has touched thousands of people in our community and those who have visited our country. His ministry has blessed people who were in need of prayer in the early morning. He was a Christian man and always tried to show the love of God and demonstrated that to all of mankind." I'm going to finish off today with a humorous story. It's entitled "The Brand New Hat." Sheila was going on her very first cruise. She was so happy that she couldn't hide her excitement. She wanted to try it all, but couldn't figure out what she should do first. Standing by the railing seemed fun. Not only was the view spectacular, but it was a must-do when one is on a cruise. So there she was, standing near the railing, holding on to her hat. While she was enjoying the stupendous view, she was approached by a young man. Awkwardly, he said, "Pardon me, ma'am. I don't mean to sound crude, but I feel obliged to inform you that your dress is blowing up in this high wind." "I know," she replied, "but both my hands are busy now. While one hand is holding on to the railing, the other is holding on to my hat." Perplexed and concerned, the youngster replied, "But, ma'am, you must be aware that you're being exposed." Sheila looked down. Then she looked at the man dead in the eye and said, "Young man, thank you for your concern, but anything you see down there is 70 years old. But this hat, it's brand new. I bought it yesterday." Thanks for tuning in. I'll be back next week. Look for me on your favorite podcast channel, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and of course my website that's newly designed, www.livingwelderly.com. I always welcome your comments. If you have a subject you'd like me to cover, please feel free to let me know in the comments. In the meantime, have a wonderful day. Living Welderly with positivity.